The Labour government has promised a devolution revolution in England, and last week took a step towards this by introducing the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill to Parliament. Despite its relatively dry name, the bill may well mark one of the biggest shake-ups of local government in 50 years, and is packed with a whole load of things, from changing how mayors are elected to introducing a community right to buy. So in this video, we're going to take a look and explain some of the key measures in the new bill. If you want more UK political drama from us, then check out our podcast Starmageddon, where we track the successes and failures of this new Labour government. Find it over on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel or in your favourite podcast app. The bill builds upon the English Devolution White Paper, published last December, which basically set out how the Labour government intended to deliver its so-called devolution revolution. Now, England's local governance structure can appear messy, confusing, and inconsistent. Because, well, it is. So to help you understand the bill, we're going to quickly explain how English local government is structured. Now, some parts of England are covered by unitary authorities, where one body is responsible for every function of local government. Other parts of England are two-tier areas, meaning that there's an upper-tier county council responsible for county-wide services like education and social care, and smaller, lower-tier district councils that have more local responsibilities like waste collection and housing. Although Labour is gradually phasing out these two-tier areas and restructuring them into single-tier unitary authorities, resulting in fewer, larger councils, which should, in theory, make local government less expensive and more efficient. Anyway, the remainder of England, largely its most urbanised areas, are covered by metropolitan councils and London boroughs, which, to keep things brief, aren't all that different from the unitary single-tier councils. However, over the years, various ad hoc devolution deals have established several combined authorities and combined county authorities. These bodies sit above the councils and comprise multiple councils that come together to obtain greater devolved powers and make policy decisions that affect their wider area, such as transport networks or regional business policies. Almost all of these combined authorities and combined county authorities are led by directly elected mayors, for example Andy Burnham in Greater Manchester. Greater London is also obviously led by a mayor, Sadiq Khan, but it has its own unique devolution settlement which predates all of the others. Anyway, the Labour government has made it clear that it sees mayors as a key part of its approach to devolution, with Angela Rayner saying last year that the government aimed to hardwire mayors into the fabric of government in a new deal for local people, and that it had a strong preference to see mayors in place across the whole of England. So naturally, the bill has a lot to do with mayors and their powers, and it also establishes a more standardised devolution framework, aimed at making the devolution process more streamlined and consistent. Now, it's a 338-page bill, so we're going to focus on just a selection of its key measures. One of the most headline-grabbing changes is that mayoral and police and crime commissioner elections will return to a supplementary vote system, which allows voters to give a first and second preference. This reverses a change made by the previous Conservative government a couple of years ago that replaced supplementary vote with first past the post. The local elections held earlier this year demonstrated the pitfalls of first past the post, as several mayors were elected with astonishingly low vote shares, two of them with under 30% of the vote. Another interesting part of the bill is that it bans so-called dual hatters by preventing individuals from simultaneously being a mayor and a member of the UK Parliament or devolved parliaments. Anyway, let's move on to the significant structural changes made by the bill. It would establish a new category of authority called the Strategic Authority. This isn't exactly a new tier of local government, but rather a new term with enhanced powers that encompasses pre-existing combined authorities, combined county authorities, and the Greater London Authority, although the government aims to eventually introduce a strategic authority for each area in England, preferably led by mayors. Creating strategic authorities is ideally a joint and consensual process, but the bill does enable the Secretary of State to establish strategic authorities without local consent if other routes have been exhausted. Now, there will be three levels that strategic authorities can belong to and progress through. The lowest, Foundation, has limited devolution and is for non-mayoral authorities. Then there's mayoral, with greater devolved powers for strategic authorities led by mayors. And finally, the highest level is established mayoral, which is for mayoral authorities which satisfy additional governance requirements, and which have the broadest range of powers, including the ability to request further devolved powers from the government. Now, strategic authorities will have powers and responsibilities in the areas shown on screen. So let's pick out a few of these and take a look at some of the new powers that mayors and strategic authorities will be granted. Housing and strategic planning is an important one, as the government sees it as key to delivering on its 1.5 million new homes by 2029 commitment. As such, the bill gives mayors greater powers over local planning, including granting them call-in powers, which the Mayor of London already has, to enable them to take over strategically important development applications. All mayors will also be given the power to more easily issue mayoral development orders that allow them to give in-principle planning permission for specific developments. And the bill also weakens the power of local planning authorities to prevent this. Similarly, all mayors will also have the power to establish mayoral development corporations, which help to deliver large and complex development and regeneration projects, such as the Olympic site in Stratford. It also extends to all mayors the power to impose community infrastructure levies on new developments, which can raise funds to go towards the building of local infrastructure needed to support these new developments. Under transport and local infrastructure, the bill also gives strategic authorities, or the highest tier of local authorities, new powers to regulate on-street micro-mobility schemes. In other words, e-bike rental services like Lime. Strategic authorities will also be required to set up and coordinate a key route network to ensure strategic oversight of the most important local roads in their area, over which mayors will now have greater powers, including the legal power to set traffic reduction targets. Under public safety, the bill will give more mayors, by default, the power and responsibilities of a police and crime commissioner, as is already the case in Greater London, Greater Manchester, and West Yorkshire. But you'll also remember that there's a community empowerment side of this bill too. Most notably, it introduces a community right to buy, which means that when an asset of community value, for example a local pub, swimming pool or community centre is up for sale, community groups will be given the first opportunity to buy it, with a 12-month window for said groups to raise funding to meet the agreed purchase price. Additionally, the bill would ban commercial leases from including upward-only rent review clauses that ensure that landlords of commercial properties are guaranteed that rent will not decrease regardless of market conditions. So, as you can see, the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill is chock full of measures that, whether you approve or disapprove of them, will dramatically reconfigure the setup of England's local government. More broadly though, it really does feel like we're in a period of political change at the moment. Gone are the days of predictable geopolitics, with Trump's America taking increasingly dramatic turns, so much so that it feels that America's influence, popularity, and dominance are all on the decline. So in the next issue of our magazine, Too Long, we're discussing this shift, and the potential that we're currently observing the end of the American order. In that section of the magazine, we discuss our thoughts on everything from the collapse of democratic norms to if America is losing allies, and if the country can maintain its dominance in energy and tech, before discussing who could potentially take over in a post-American world. So if you want to find out what we really think about America, now's your chance. It's not just the US either though. This issue is our longest ever at 78 pages. So we also get into stories like why El Salvador and Kosovo are becoming the world's penal colonies, if the UK is lacking vision at the moment, if Europe can really defend itself, and why leaders like Putin and Netanyahu seem to be getting away with it. Plus, we also have a full interview with Professor James Kerr-Lindsay, who you might also know from YouTube, all about the collapse of the global order. Now, if that all sounds good to you, but you'd rather listen than read along, then you should check out the premium edition. Because anyone who buys a premium edition of our magazine also gets access to our recordings of selected articles. Plus, you also get access to the full 90-minute interview with James Kerr-Lindsay. On top of that, premium subscribers also get access to our behind-the-scenes podcast, The Bullpen. Regardless of whether you opt for the regular or premium edition, if you never want to miss an issue, then make sure you subscribe to Too Long, which gets you 20% off every copy as long as you stay subscribed. Plus, this week only, if you use the code BESTOFFER when signing up for a subscription, you'll get an additional 35% off. That brings down the cost as low as £5.20, or a wild 48% off. That is the best offer we are ever going to offer. So pre-order your copy today to get yourself that extra content and support all of the journalism we do here at TLDR every single day.